Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kelly Andrews, and I'd like to welcome you all to our Friday Forum today, which is all about localising the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So before I introduce our wonderful guest speakers that you can see on screen, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the land on which we all meet today. I live and work on Dharawal country, between the mountains and the sea of the beautiful Illawarra region. And I'd like to pay my respects to Aboriginal elders, past, present and emerging, and any Aboriginal people that might be joining us today from all parts of New South Wales and Victoria from where I can see. I'm just going to admit a few more people. So the format for today is about a 15-minute presentation from each of our speakers. And then I'll help facilitate a Q&A via the chat function on Zoom. So just to keep the focus on our speakers, we'll keep Murdad, I'll ask to get rid of Murdad. We'll keep everybody on mute and with your cameras off, please. Just admitting some more people. And also to make you aware that today's session is being recorded. It'll be posted on our Healthy Cities Illawarra website and socials after today. So first of all, I'd like to thank David and Belinda for joining us and giving us the benefit of their time and expertise this afternoon. So David Sweeting, I'll just put a few more people in. If everyone could just make sure they're muted.
You should be able to mute Joel, Kelly.
I'm just trying to, it's myself.
He's having a fantastic conversation.
I think that's week 10, but yeah. That.
Can you see
Can
me?
I don't have enough card.
Murdad looks like he is muted, so I don't think it's Murdad.
It's just Joel.
Okay.
Joel, can you hear us? Could you just mute your mic? Can you see Joel on the list, Kelly?
Just place an order with auto wire.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Belinda. More people coming in. Multitasking at its best. Okay, so David, sorry for that, David. David Sweeting, he's an urban development expert in the areas of urban innovation, urban resilience, social entrepreneurship, and participatory urban governance. He is the co-manager for the City Resilience and Sustainable Futures team within the Climate Change and City Resilience branch of the City of Melbourne. He is the founder and principal of the Urban Platform Studio, an urban innovation and research consultancy which supports pathways for investment and assessment, design and evaluation of social services. David is also an Institute Associate with the Institute for Culture for Society at Western Sydney University. And Belinda Gibbons is the Deputy Associate Dean Education at the Faculty of Business and Law at the University of Wollongong. I'll just let a few more people in. Belinda specialises in lots of things: responsible and sustainable development, decision-making, reporting and impact, combining 25 years of academic and corporate experience. She represents business, higher education institutions in Southern Asia and the Pacific, collaborating with lots of other international committee members for responsible management into education. Her passion for embedding the UN Sustainable Development Goals within education has led to receiving a citation for outstanding contributions to student learning alongside becoming a Senior Fellow of Higher Education Academy. So without further ado, I'll mute myself, get rid of myself, hand you over to David, who would like to share your screen.
Thanks for the wonderful introduction, Kelly, and it's a pleasure to join everyone. I also like to pay my respects to the traditional owners of this land. I'm calling from the Eastern Kulin Nation in Melbourne. And the owners are the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people. So I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Just give me a second while I go to share my screen. Hopefully people can see that.
Yep, that's all good, David.
Great. I promise I'll stick to the 15 minutes because I quite think there's more value in having some discussion and questions to tackle. As Belinda introduced, I co-manage the City Resilience and Sustainable Futures team, which is responsible for embedding the SDGs at City of Melbourne. And I thought I'd both take you through some of the, I guess, the steps that we've taken to embed the SDGs as a practical framework for council to use and measure its performance against. So I'll take you through the journey that we're currently on, and some of the reasons why we've gone about using the SDGs as that kind of benchmark. Probably don't need to explain what the SDGs are to this group. I assume everyone understands the global framework. But as a reminder, the framework itself is made up of 17 goals and 169 targets and 231 indicators. It's important, I guess it's important point to reflect upon for local government, because not all those targets and indicators are necessarily relevant to us. So one of the major steps, which I'll touch on, is in localizing those targets and indicators to suit local government. We set up a project, set up this SDG project really to assess our performance against the SDGs and use data and insights to inform and prioritise council efforts. We also we aim to use the global framework to compare performance against other cities, which I'll talk about later. And really important for us is to understand where Melbourne is leading and where it's lagging behind, particularly as a capital city LGA. And also we see it as an opportunity to impart knowledge and to learn from other cities as we embed the framework even further into our operations. The VLR is a voluntary local review. So I'll go into that in more detail as well. But one of the main products for us was to produce a voluntary local review, which is a report that cities can produce to share their performance in a transparent way. We are about to launch our VLR. It's going to council for approval in March, and this is when we will be sharing that with the public. But the role of this document is effectively be like a sustainability report, similar to sustainability reports from corporates, or much like a corporate report, but focused on sustainability for local government. And it assesses our city's collective progress against the SDGs. It provides that baseline to review and prioritise and learn from the work that council does and the services we provide, which contribute to the SDGs alongside global cities. And it provides a performance and prioritisation framework to guide annual planning and budgeting. This project has been going since December 20 when I joined City of Melbourne. We started off in partnership with the University of Melbourne. So University of Melbourne helped us to familiarise council staff with the SDG framework, and then helped us localise those targets and indicators that I mentioned. So between sort of December to March 21, that period was about localising the targets and indicators to make them relevant to council. Around April 21, we signed a declaration with the New York City Mayor's Office to commit to the voluntary local review. And so that's it's an agreement between cities to produce this voluntary local review. For us, it will be every 4 years. Some other cities produce it more frequently. We are the first city or local government authority in Australia to sign up to this. But there's roughly around 200 cities who have signed up or planning to sign up around the world. So it is a bit of a movement within the sort of city, from a city perspective, trying to take some ownership in supporting the SDGs. We also are looking at benchmarking. We've established some approaches to how we might benchmark against other cities. And as I mentioned, we're about to launch the voluntary local review report this year. This all kind of leads up to the UN high-level political forum in June, when the VLRs are presented. So that is our target date. And that's an opportunity where we get to share with the world, I guess, what sustainability looks like from Melbourne's perspective. The declaration, if you are interested, there's 3 commitments that the council has agreed to. One is to identify how existing strategies, programs, data and targets align with the SDGs. 2 is to provide at least one forum where stakeholders can come together to share experiences, lessons and information gathered using the framework. And 3 is to submit the VLR to the UN high-level political forum. So we have met all those 3 commitments. There's obviously room for interpretation, particularly when engaging external stakeholders. So City of Melbourne's been looking at using our online platform called Participate Melbourne to share the report, the draft report, but also gather feedback from the community. And that's the way that we'll do our community engagement. But other cities have organised events and other ways of engaging community. These are sort of the broader steps that we've taken to embed the SDGs. Taking that big global framework, localizing it into targets and indicators. Just from memory, I think our indicator suite is quite large. It's in the 250 to 300 range, covering all the goals. And we draw down data from data sources that are publicly available. So ABS data primarily, but also from council surveys that we run regularly as sort of supplementary data to what's already out there in the public. And then producing the voluntary local review, that's when we've completed our measurement, that's when we communicate how we're performing. These sort of bottom 3 steps we're about to embark on is the benchmarking against other cities. I think it's a really exciting piece for council, is to sort of look outside our 4 walls and be able to compare against global cities, but also learn from each other. So in a non-competitive way, that's getting away from the livability index towards more sustainable outcomes, because it takes cooperation between cities and regions and countries to achieve the goals itself. So it's very much focused on that learning aspect. Another piece that's exciting for us is using the results from the report to guide future investment in council. And that's embedding the report into annual planning and budgeting. I know it doesn't sound that exciting, perhaps, but it's a key piece in being able to shift the dial. So if we're performing poorly in poverty, for example, and we see those results, we've got the evidence to say, well, this is the investment that we should be making. And so I think that's a really important step in making the framework practical for council. And the other piece is aligned with council plan. So it shouldn't really be seen as a separate piece of work when embedding the SDGs. It should be aligned with priorities in council plan. For us, that has happened. We've aligned it with our core themes. So we've got 6 core themes within council plan, and we did some high level mapping early on where the goals align with those. So as you can see, there's some of the themes have a lot of goals, like access and affordability have a lot of goals that are aligned. And then there's others that probably less so, like Melbourne's unique identity in place. But it's an important step to make sure there is that alignment. This is also speaking to alignment in our planning. This is probably an early release of an image that we're going to put in the report. but we have our 10-year vision as a local government. We have our 4-year council plan, and we do our 1-year annual planning and budgeting, so all on the right side. And what our role is, my team's role is to align the voluntary local review, the targets and indicators, and producing an annual performance scorecard, aligning that with the processes that are already in place at council. This is just a bit of benchmarking. I probably won't go into this in too much detail because I'm conscious of time. But the really important step around benchmarking, as I said, is first of all, establishing your baseline for performance. The next tricky step really is to identify cities where you can compare to, because not every city uses the same indicator for comparison. And so that's a project in itself that we're looking at, is how we can sort of streamline comparison. There are a few data sets that we can look to, for example, the World Council of City Data, that is one source. The Sustainable Development Solutions Network also provides data. And cities that produce VLRs, we can look at those as well. This is just a source for where the VLRs are located. I can pop it in the chat afterwards, but it's a great source for just having a look at what cities are producing. They're all very different reports too. Some are organised by goal, some are organised by theme according to their council plan or city plan or strategy. So ones that we've been looking at, so if you want to take a look later on, is New York, LA, Bristol. They're kind of like real standout reports to consider if you're thinking about this journey. And I'm happy to sort of field questions later on if you want to discuss this. And this is, I'll probably end on this slide. Not the most exciting slide, but it shows how different cities are presenting their data. So the actual report is quite big because it's capturing all the information that they're measuring, and it's presented in different ways. But generally, cities are showing trends on how they're performing against each indicator, whether they're improving, declining, or whether there's sort of no change at all. And I think that's a real important sort of piece in the communication, is that cities are able to transparently and openly share that not everything is going well, but also some things are going really well, and we have the evidence to prove it. So I might stop there.
Thanks, David. Kelly, you happy for me just to kick off and do questions at the end?
Yes, please, Belinda, that'd be great.
No worries. Thanks so much for that, David. It's so lovely to hear about what another region is doing in this space. So hi everyone, Belinda. I'm from the University of Wollongong and have been working closely with Healthy Cities Illawarra and some of our New South Wales government team on looking at how we might localise the Sustainable Development Goals in our region. And yeah, I would also like to acknowledge that the beautiful land on which I'm joining you from is Aboriginal land. I am sitting on beautiful Dharawal country, looking outside my window today, and pay respect to elders past, present and emerging. So I guess while implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals is being led by countries, local authorities, businesses, associations and citizens are crucial when it comes to implementing, actioning and achieving the goals. The places that we work and live make us closest to what's happening with our people, in our country and in our communities. It is crucial that the global language of the Sustainable Development Goal framework be seen and translated for a local lens, so that each of us, I guess in our own way, can contribute to the social, environmental and economic needs that our communities are facing. And very much leading on from what David was saying. We see that a lot of councils and local organisations, businesses, associations have such an untapped opportunity in looking at this framework, whether that is to drive change, to integrate into their plans, thinking back to some of the reasons that David mentioning that Victoria are using this framework, or even to engage in new conversations with employees and communities. I guess one of the big questions that we were asking ourselves in our region is, where do you start? And David mentioned that baseline. How do you create that baseline in order to allow local regions to have a global conversation at that next level? And so the University of Wollongong engaged in a partnership grant with Healthy Cities Illawarra to look at how effectively can the goals, targets and indicators be mapped at a local level. Wanting to have that local conversation around our world's biggest challenges. And we were really fortunate in partnering with the Shoalhaven City Council and them allowing us into to their world and into their strategic documents, just to have a bit of a play in that space and to start a conversation. We originally started with a very manual process, to be honest. And for those of you who have started mapping your work against the goals, it's a bit like Alice in Wonderland. You fall down a hole and don't know if you'll ever come back up. But we analysed the Shoalhaven City Council's themes and priorities against, all the goals, all the targets and all the indicators. And it was quite a long process, very manual in data entry and with many different versions of spreadsheets. But what we did find in that process was it was so rewarding, it was so engaging to work with the councillors and to see them having the employees of the council having conversations within their teams about what these mean. Where is this document? I've got that document. The team engagement was crucial. And so after the kind of this manual process and the documents we produced, we looked at creating, I guess, an e-mapping tool. And so we are piloting the design and development of a tool that will help not only councils, but businesses, citizens, organisations to map their baseline against the Sustainable Development Goals and targets, but also moving forward to track their ongoing progress against the goals and their targets. And so we're calling this piloted tool the SDG Localiser. And I just wanted to give you a bit of a glimpse of it today, to see if you're interested in having a go at it, and just to showing you where we're at currently with this tool. At the end of the day, the tool will produce a bit of a dashboard for you that shows how your themes and priorities align with the goals, and you can hover over and have a look at which targets that they do align with moving forward. And so let me just kick off and show you how we kind of get to this state. You can find the SDG Localiser on the healthycities.org.au website. If you click on that link, it'll take you through, and there's a little bit of a tutorial video to watch. But once you're in there, you're going to create your organisation, and I've just got a fictitious organisation today called Friday Forum. And really important that only you can see the data that you enter in this space. Once you're signed in, what's the lovely thing about this tool at the moment is that you can have many different maps. So you may want to, you may want to map your strategic plan. You may want to map your team's goals. You may want to map the new project you're starting. You may want to map a grant that you're applying for. Just looking at these goals through the many different ways that we live and work in this space. And so you can come in here and do as many maps as you like. Or you can track yourself through the years as well. Once you've kind of, I guess, created your organisation and you're going to kick off with a map, you're then going to enter your themes and priority areas. And so at the moment, this is manual entry, and what you'll do is when we say themes and priority areas, the tool at the moment will handle 2 levels within a reporting frame, I guess. So, for example, councils call them theme and priorities in their community strategic plan. Healthy Cities Illawarra calls them priorities and deliverables. UOW, I think, calls them goals and deliverables. So there's all these different terms that we use in this space, but whether you're a council or a business, it's those priorities that you're working towards under, I guess, key themes. So you'll enter your theme, and then you're going to enter the priority areas. Now, I've filled in under Healthy Cities Illawarra, their first theme is their health deliverables. Under that, I've just added 2 priority areas. One is their prevention and control of chronic disease, and the other is participation. Now, I can add these keywords, and these keywords are what will be used to match against the goals and the targets. These keywords come from the documents that you're producing and form the basis of the discussion that you're going to have with your teams when you're doing your baseline and your mapping. So I've kind of started my skeleton here. I've got my theme, I've got my priorities there, and now I just want to click on one of these priorities and start to map against the goals and the targets. Now, in this system, I guess there's 3 ways you can map at the moment. One is, and I'll take you through them, one is what we call this automated assistant mapping. Now, the automated assistant mapping is a beta phase at the moment, and we're playing with it because it's such an exciting space. It uses natural language processing techniques that heuristically analyse the similarity of given keywords, whether partial or all, against the language used in the Sustainable Development Goals and their respective targets. So, which is why the keywords are really important if you want to use that particular aspect of this tool. And what you're going to do is, you know, the system will come up and say, well, this is what we think you might align with given your priority and the keywords you're using in that priority. But it's really important that you have a look at these and go, okay, so Kelly may say, for prevention and control of chronic disease, are we working towards agricultural productivity and the incomes of food producers? Is that where Healthy Cities Illawarra are working? So if we are, we're going to tick that particular target, and then you'll start to map up the top here, and you'll start to form the basis of your dashboard. And you can do the automated version for all your priority areas. But really important, rather than it happening quite quickly, is to really look at these targets and look at them against your priorities and say, is that what we're trying to achieve here? Because as David mentioned, it's not a one-on-one translation from this global outlook to the work we're doing locally. So it's really translating it for yourself and going, okay, we, Healthy Cities Illawarra, we work with food and education. Are we looking at agriculture at all? And asking yourselves those questions to try and help with that alignment. And then, of course, you can hover over and see the targets that you have selected. The other way is the manual process at the moment. And this is where this beautiful conversation occurs. And when you click there, the goals will come up for you, and you're going to select one. Let's say we want to select first with no poverty. We're going to select no poverty, and the targets and indicators will come up. And what you want to do is I've gone to participation here. I want to look at participation. I want to look at the keywords, and I want to ask myself, okay, is this priority area for my council or for my business? Is the work we do in here working towards, eradicating extreme poverty? And in some ways, having the indicators there is great, because it can also help you further understand what that target is. And looking at that indicator and saying, oh, that's really quite interesting how, and again, this is a UN indicator. David mentioned that they've come up, they have their indicators that they've aligned with. Looking at that and going, well, that's interesting how the UN measure that. Do we measure this at all? How do we measure it? How could we if we don't? Measures was one of those key conversations that came up with the councils that we work with, especially smaller councils. We don't measure all these things. So it's like, do we want to? Do we not? So again, this crucial conversation that's occurring. And again, you're going to move through asking yourselves these questions as you move through the targets. This is so beneficial to occur in a team, in your team environment. You may want to do this, at strategy time. You may want to do this, quarterly, again, depending on what you want to use this for. until you start to, I guess, form your overall dashboard of where you align. And I think what, and you'll notice it with David's images and some of the conversations he spoke about is really looking at this and not saying whether it's right or wrong or judging or comparing against others, but looking at it and saying, oh, gee, that's really interesting. I didn't realise we had an impact in the poverty space. You know, that's not the language we tend to use in our organisation. Let's have a look at that a little bit further. Or that's really interesting that, you know, we're not coming up under gender equality. You know, we have lots of strategies around gender equality in our organisation. Why didn't that come up in this particular mapping? And that may just come back to keywords. It may be the particular document that we've mapped against. Lots of different, really valuable conversations that can occur when you're doing this work. Again, you can print from the tool to a PDF, and you can also export it out to a CSV file, and that spreadsheet will then allow you to, if you want to put your own charts around it or different graphics or visuals. So quite simple at the moment, but we are just piloting and getting into the space of playing, one with the automated and one getting councils and businesses to work in their teams to go through this mapping. And again, you know, think about how you want to use that in your reporting or your socials or for grants or collaborations with others. And as I mentioned, just there's different conversations that might arise with areas that are really highlighted for you. You know, we find that councils, you know, obviously sustainable cities and communities will come up in abundance. So then it's delving into that and saying which particular targets did we match against, and that's really interesting. What other council is in that space can we have a conversation with? So that's where I think it's really quite exciting. And so from us, I guess we'd love you to play with the tool. It's a free tool, open for anyone to have a bit of a play with and see what comes up, and love to hear your feedback and see where we can take this kind of tool, I guess moving forward. Thank you so much. Thanks, Kelly. You're just on mute, sorry.
Thanks, Belinda. Thank you both very, very much for those insights. If anyone has any questions and you'd like to type it into the chat, please feel free, or you might be multitasking right now on the Healthy Cities website, having a little look at it yourself. But I thought I did have an interesting question for you, David, given that Melbourne is always right up in the top of the world rankings for livability. I thought it was really interesting that City of Melbourne has made a deliberate decision to look at measures away from just livability and more sustainability. And I just wondered if you could talk to that. I thought that was very impressive given the competition, Melbourne, Sydney, and Melbourne, everyone else. How you came to that, or why sustainability is important to move towards.
Great question, Kelly. There's several reasons to use the SDGs versus other frameworks that are out there. Well, one, I guess sustainability has been a part of Melbourne's story for many decades now, but Melbourne is a global city. And you can't really ignore the fact that it has a role to play in those global networks and relationships. So from that perspective, a strategic one, I suppose, it's important for Melbourne to show some leadership. I think you look at the people who live in Melbourne, issues of their concern, particularly around climate change, biodiversity, waste management. So those are key concerns that are increasing. So we're I guess listening to our residents and our visitors, because we have quite a high number of visitors to the city. That's another reason to focus on sustainability. But I guess the last one is that we're also a bit of a knowledge focused city. We've got 7 major universities here, and there's a wealth of expertise that we can tap into from the university sector. So we, as I mentioned, we're partnering with the University of Melbourne, also Monash University, in help delivering this project. So I think from as a key partner with universities, it makes a lot of sense to align around sustainability and SDGs.
Thanks, David. And Belinda, I was going to ask you, I think, and there's some people in the audience that were involved in the mapping and the early stages of developing this tool as well. Like key learnings, like how do you feel after the Shoalhaven experience? You know, what's the real selling point for local government to have a play with this tool?
I think it's a conversation starter. And I think we just can't have enough conversations in this space within teams and across teams within organisations, because this is such a holistic framework. You know, it just doesn't sit within the strategy team of a department to fill in based on the strategy document. It sits within the whole organisation, you know, to have a think about, you know, and this is not anything that's adding on. All the work that everyone does is so aligned with, you know, meeting the challenges that our world faces. So I feel it was the conversation that occurred, you know, across teams, you know, finding documents, thinking about measures and indicators, and hearing one person from one team say, oh, but actually we do work in that space, and another person saying, oh, I didn't realise that you guys did that. And so that's, you know, that's not council specific. It happens in businesses, in not-for-profits, in your small businesses. And so it's those conversations. And I guess the question would be, well, how do you manage that? You know, how do you have an entire wide conversation? It just has to start somewhere. It starts, you know, from I guess, potentially the, you know, having a looking at it and pulling those teams in to say, you know, what else happens in this space that we can talk about. Yeah, so for me, the key is the conversations that occur and the collaborations that can form.
Thank you, Belinda. I think there's something that's come through, just a comment. Yeah, I think everyone's very quiet out there. It might be just because we've just not overwhelmed, but we just presented this for the first time. So you probably need to just go away and have a little experiment, give us some feedback. Toby has a question. Let me just unmute Toby. Hey.
Hey, Belinda, David, that was awesome. Thank you very much. I think SDGs have got huge potential, and I think it's awesome, all of the tracking work that's going on, and the localizer looks awesome. My question is probably around the localizer and whatnot's around tracking our activities and our actions. Is there much work taking place around how we measure the outcomes and the impact of those actions, from whether it be the local or the more global level, that you're aware of?
You want to go first, David?
Fantastic question, Toby. Measuring outcomes is what it should be about. For us, we can measure directly our contributions to targets, and so really important for us to get the targets right. First of all, getting the language right so it suits a Melbourne context, but also making sure that if there's end targets, that we should be stating what are we aiming for. What outcomes, I suppose, relate to the goals itself. Like are we achieving the goals? It's hard for us to say as a one LGA that we're achieving these goals. It's all about contribution towards the goals. So that's, I guess, for us, we went through that process of making a clear distinction that we're focused on targets and measuring indicators, but also demonstrating our contribution to the goals themselves. I think the mechanism up is through the voluntary national review, and ideally you would have lots of cities, LGAs reporting against the SDGs, and that would feed up into the voluntary national review. I think the last one was in 2018 from memory. And so that's an important mechanism, again, to communicate globally what Australia's doing nationally, but drawing on the information that's available at a local level.
Belinda, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think there's that old saying, you know, what gets measured gets done. Unfortunately, in some spaces, I feel. But I guess for me, we can't measure unless we don't have a baseline. And so it's for us, the conversation initially at the moment was just to get that baseline. It's how do we align, if at all, and what does that mean to us? I think without having that discussion, we're looking at these using the global language that they're using, and it just doesn't align with us. You know, we think, well, I'm not working in a developed country per se. I don't know what that means to me. So we just tend to grab the goal and go, yes, I work in, you know, good health and well-being, and I stick that logo on my document. And that's a conversation starter. But as David mentioned, those targets are really critical to go, actually, we do work in this space and we're having meaningful work in this space. And then the next step is, well, how do we measure? How do we measure that? Because within organisations, we already have a set of indicators. So for Shoalhaven City Council, for example, we looked at their indicators and then had to go through the hundreds of UN indicators and see if any of them align. And it doesn't matter if they didn't, but we kind of want to see where we're feeding up, what that means to us, because, you know, we want our region to have a conversation in that voluntary national review. And whenever the next one comes out, 2025 or something like that, you know, we want the Illawarra Shoalhaven region to be in there. You know, we're doing so much amazing work. And so we want to, but to show that work, we need to be talking this language. And so that's where that measures are crucial, I think. But it is an important conversation, Toby. The tool at the moment, it shows the indicators, but it doesn't ask you, you know, what measure are you using against this? You know, that would be a lovely addition. I can hear Mirdad from UOW Smart Team just cringing as I mention that. But, you know, because, this obviously makes it a lot more complicated. But that would be nice too. Thanks for the question.
I'll probably say one more thing. We also identified against those indicators what role we play as a council, because we don't always deliver programs. Sometimes we play an advocacy role. A lot of times we do play an advocacy role, trying to advocate up to state government or federal government. So that was just another, I guess, piece that I sort of left out, but it is a key one when looking at the measurements and sort of trying to take or determine when to take action, or what kind of action to take, I should say.
Well, if there's no other questions, we might have an early minute and thank our presenters very much for your insights and expertise. You can, we'll put this on our Facebook page and the Healthy Cities website next week. And there's a question around whether or not your presentations can be made available in a PDF form as well. Would that be all right? If you email those to me, and I can see Kathy would like one, and if anyone else would, just let me know. Thanks very much, everybody. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you.